I'd like to begin with a quote I've borrowed from our Attorney General. Government officials are the caretakers of the public trust, placed in positions of trust that affect the lives and finances of the public. Citizens of Georgia have a right to expect that their government officials will be beyond reproach. My journey to become Georgia's 10th commissioner was born out of the same frustration that many of you experienced before, during, and after the unprecedented pandemic. It's no secret that the agency's internal morale and external image have deteriorated over the past several years as the former leadership ignored the opportunities and requests to collaborate, cooperate, and communicate with the other state agencies, the legislative body, and the executive branch. Over the past decade, the Department of Labor has been plagued with rumors and reports of incompetence, misappropriation, and failure. This contentious disregard for other agencies and Georgia's constitutional requirement, it became so egregious at one point that it placed the state bond rating in jeopardy. For years, the executive branch and legislative branch have attempted to change the unhealthy relationship that existed with this agency and eliminate the silos built around it. After putting up with nearly a decade of obstructive behavior, the frustrated legislature finally resorted to legislative maneuvers to get the attention of the agency's leadership. In 2021, a vote of no confidence from the General Assembly resulted in Senate Bill 156 successfully passing before ultimately being vetoed by the governor over constitutionality concerns. This bill created an appointed chief labor officer with similar powers and responsibilities to the labor commissioner as an attempt to gain insight and create transparency within this agency. In 2022, House Bill 1331 was signed into a law allowing the governor to designate the responsibility and the administration of the remaining federal and WIOA funds away from the Georgia Department of Labor and to the Technical College of Georgia, effectively reducing our budget by nearly $65 million. When I took office, my team and I began the monumental task of changing the culture of this struggling agency by immediately instituting a plan to identify deficiencies, vulnerabilities, and weaknesses that tarnished this agency for many years. With a focus on transparency and accountability, our goal was to rebuild confidence and trust while ushering in a new era of credibility. During the campaign, I made it clear I would ensure the agency would no longer be shrouded in secrecy and isolation, but would become cooperative and work in concert with the Inspector General, the Attorney General, the United States Department of Labor, and the State Auditor's Office to identify all levels of fraud and corruption associated with the Unemployment Benefit Trust Fund and this agency. Earlier this year, a report was released by former Inspector General Scott McAfee that at least 280 full-time state employees who were never unemployed received nearly $6.7 million in unemployment benefits between 2020 and 2021. This past week, the Attorney General reported a collaborative effort between this agency and several other agencies resulting in the indictment of 8 defendants that allegedly received fraudulent unemployment benefits of over $170,000. And I am confident this vigilance will result in more prosecutions in the future. At a time when public trust in government continues to erode, we must begin taking tangible measures and actions to reverse course. I hope that after these announcements and today's press conference, you can see that is exactly what I intend to do. After taking office in January, it became clear to me and my new leadership that the Georgia Department of Labor had much bigger problems than antiquated technology, poor morale, and financial struggles. Before long, my suspicions led me to request an internal investigation of the finance department to be conducted by my internal legal team. The results confirmed our suspicions and led me to engage the state auditor and request additional assistance in addressing our concerns with ambiguous sources of monies that were identified within this agency. At this point, what I'm about to say next is not fully conclusive as investigations continue. The findings do not constitute a full scope audit, but do reveal that over a period of the last 9 years, the prior commissioner and at least a few members of his leadership colluded to intentionally avoid properly disclosing over $105 million to the state and federal government. Beginning in 2014, a combination of 3 different funds were commingled and carefully hidden in the Federal Unemployment Trust Fund, where they were mischaracterized and undetected. In August 2020, some nearly $49 million were transferred out of this trust fund just before the trust fund became insolvent due to the effects of COVID-19 to prevent the federal government from drawing these funds down and paying benefits. The funds were transferred to the Georgia Department of Labor administrative account for a few days, and then transferred again to the unemployment tax clearing account, where it grew without interest. I'd like to highlight that the movement of these funds to a non-interest bearing account cost the state millions of dollars. 679 days later, the fund was transferred back to the Federal Unemployment Trust Fund, where again it began drawing interest. These funds were a combination of administrative assessment fees, employer penalty and interest fees that were never remitted to the state treasury. The exact breakdown of the funds: $20,829,614 in administrative assessment fees, $63,139,053 in penalties, and $21,201,509 in interest, for a total of $105,170,178.20. On August 4th, I ordered my interim chief financial officer, who is with us here, to transmit the entire balance to the state treasury. Ladies and gentlemen, the full impact of this alleged fraudulent activity is yet to be completely realized, as several important files and records are missing or unavailable. In years of state and federal reports are yet to be fully reviewed and restated for accuracy. At this moment, it appears evident that several state and federal statutes have been violated by this previous administration. As the current commissioner and a duly elected constitutional officer of Georgia, I promise to work tirelessly to hold accountable all those responsible for betraying the public and betraying the innocent Department of Labor employees that were unaware of this deceitful activity. To summarize, the previous administration did not properly disclose over $105 million to the state and federal government. Our office is dedicated to following through with a thorough investigation to hold these responsible accountable, and we'll do so with 100% transparency. No one is above the law, and I hope that everyone connected to this investigation will voluntarily and openly cooperate with officials as we seek to restore confidence in this agency. I am grateful to the executive branch, the legislative branch, the Attorney General, Georgia's Office of Inspector General, and Georgia's Department of Audits and Account for their assistance and cooperation and their resolve to conduct these investigations. Again, ongoing investigations. Additionally, in accordance with the law, we are fully cooperating with the United States Department of Labor and the United States Office of Inspector General in their investigation into this matter. Thank you, and I'll take some questions.
Hey, yeah, I'm used to holding the microphone. It's Justin Gray with WSB-TV. Commissioner, are you alleging that Commissioner Butler intentionally committed fraud, that he knowingly broke Georgia and federal law?
Thank you for that question. I don't think it is, it's not my position to allege anything. What we did is we came in like you would with any business or agency. We looked at the books, we looked at the cash flow, We saw irregularities. We had individuals that we asked questions that divulged information to us willingly. Of course, the investigation that you are all, it's right here. We're going to make it available to you. It's the interim report from state auditors. We'll also say that not everyone was compliant with doing this. I think that report there speaks volumes to what was going on.
But you believe laws were intentionally broken?
It's in my opinion that we broke some constitutional laws and so on. And as the investigation continues, we'll let the authorities that are responsible bear out what the actions will be.
And it's been turned over to the Attorney General?
The Attorney General is aware of this. So again, it's an ongoing investigation. This report is an interim report that we decided this morning when we would release to you. You can look through the report for yourself and come to your own conclusions.
Can you talk, Rawl Valley, WAVE Radio, can you talk about what these funds were? Were these the funds that employers were putting into unemployment, or what were these funds? Were they from the federal government? I think I'm trying to clarify what the majority or all of this money was.
Thanks, Raul. 3 different buckets, if you will. So in our state, we have what we call administrative assessment fees. An employer pays their unemployment, and we don't raise the premium, but it was designated through law that we would be able to collect a small piece of that, or separate, if you will, and it should go over to the state treasury and then be reappropriated back, okay? So that's your administrative assessment fee. You'll see in this report that the agency only remitted part of that money, and again, I'm referring back to the report. The report states that it may have been born out of a frustration with the General Assembly and an appropriations process, so they decided to keep some of that. Then you have penalties and interest. It's when an employer fails to timely pay what they're required quarterly, there's penalties and interest. Again, the agency is not allowed to keep that. Statute states any resources that an agency in our state collect is to be sent in a timely manner within a month to the state, to the treasury, and OPB would then appropriate the money back. So 3 buckets.
And then can you, because you mentioned them throughout your opening statement, can you name the agencies that are involved in either investigating or have been informed of this?
It's an ongoing investigation, so let's just say each and every one will have an interest or involved.
No, but who? Can you go through those again?
Yeah, I'm happy to read those that I am giving credence to. So everyone that has an interest in it and may be involved in this ongoing investigation would be the executive branch, the legislative branch, the Attorney General, Georgia's Office of Inspector General, the Georgia Department of Audits and Accounts, United States Department of Labor, and United States Office of Inspector General.
And then final question, then I'll get out Joe's way. Can you describe or talk about, you said you have internal legal folks looking at this, the cooperation or the ability to work with Mark Butler on this? Has your folks been able to work with the former commissioner on this?
Former commissioner has not contacted me one time since I've taken office.
Donna Lowry with
Hi,
Georgia
Donna.
Public Broadcasting. So what do you say to people? We know during the pandemic there were people who didn't get unemployment benefits. What do you say to them right now about this money that's been found?
Yeah, let me be clear. The people that stand here in this room, the members of the Department of Labor, the employees that are at work right now around the state are good people, working very hard to make sure that we are providing benefits and services to people at the most vulnerable times in their life. They're good people. They just happen to be under a leadership that certainly is being borne out in this report that maybe didn't conduct themselves in a manner they should. So to the individuals that hear this message that, hey, they were not able to get their benefits and so on, it's a new day at the Department of Labor. We have moved from transaction to relational, and I can assure you that we are making the significant changes to make sure they get those benefits that they're entitled to. Anyone that's not, make no mistake, if there's fraudulent activity, we're going to stop that as well.
Joe Ripley, 11 Line News. Usually you can't talk about this stuff as you kind of tread lightly. With this ongoing investigation, why are you able to disclose all that you have so far?
So in concert of this investigation, it's taken a couple of months to get to the bottom. We did not want to jump to conclusions. It was already spoken about. We had internal audits. We, as anything, as a small business, you come in and you look at the books, You look at transaction, you look at P&Ls and balance sheets in business. We did the same thing as we came in to look at the systems and controls and notice some irregularities. And the individual mentioned something to us. At that point, we have our legal team that are here and ask questions. Ask them to then start the internal investigation to see if it's a concern or a legitimate problem. It became very clear it was a legitimate problem. We then engaged others, including the state auditor. One of the things that I would say is this: we're going to make sure that this never happens again. I would say that not only through our modernization process that I mentioned, for the last 2 years it needs to happen here, that will put the adequate controls in place to prevent that from ever happening.
That was my next question.
David Shinjolio, Learning Journal Constitution. I'm just wondering, what would be the gain for the administration for keeping this money for $105 million, especially if it's still unspent? It wasn't being gained on interest for such a long time, as you said. What's to gain besides maybe, as you said, contentiousness between other departments?
It's a great question. I'm not on the investigative team, but I think anyone that would avoid the constitutional requirement to submit it, that would sign documents that would state otherwise, and all the other activities that are very clearly outlined, not only in this report and others, that's a question for the individuals that were involved in doing it. I would see no reason that you would ever violate that, because it will come to light at some point. But back to his question, when we started this investigation and started going through it, we knew those resources belonged in the state treasury. We wanted to get it in the fiscal year, which was last Friday. Once we do that, it was going to bring to light what was going on, and so that's why I'm making you aware of this.
Have you heard from the AG or the governor's office, anyone in these agencies you're working with on this discovery?
I won't speak for them, but I will tell you each and every one that I have spoken to is just as troubled and concerned about what was going on and how we fix this moving forward. Anytime you're an elected official, regardless of what party you're in, we're charged when we raise our hand as a constitutional officer and or elected official. We take an oath, and that oath is to make sure that we're to protect whatever our responsibilities are, and whenever that is violated or breached, we should all be concerned about it, and they are concerned as well.
Do you believe your predecessor committed a crime?
You know, it is my opinion that any time you violate the Constitution, it's a crime, but that is only my opinion.
Is there any concern that any of these funds are unrecoverable, that they were federal, use it or lose it kind of money?
It is an ongoing investigation. Again, I've mentioned we are working with the United States Department of Labor as well as the Office of Inspector General federally. That is still to be determined what can happen, what penalties, what ramifications can be. Certainly, I think there's going to be actions have consequences, and unfortunately, it is my tenure that's going to bear the brunt of that, but we will work through that.
So it's possible this is money, some of it, that could be lost forever to us.
It is certainly possible.
So audits weren't taking place all along.
Again, I don't want to muddy the water with an open investigation, but I would say that it was, and again, detailed in this report that you can read, there were remittances, but it was periodic, it was not consistent, it was not compliant, and then there were documents that were signed that said otherwise. Other questions? Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. I can tell you we're going to do everything we can in a pretty rapid fashion to make sure that we can restore confidence with Georgia, and each and every one of you, we move this agency to the next level and next stage. So thanks for joining us, and be safe out there.